We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Welcome to Mostly Horror.
Mostly.
I'm Steve.
And I am Sean.
And we're back with another episode.
Yeah, we are.
We've recorded 2 interviews in 2 days, which is something we haven't done in a minute. And I feel like even though these weren't people that were unable to talk because of the SAG strike, we've just had like a lull because of the strike in guests. And we're back at it. We have 2, we've had a bunch of great guests, and we have 2 more for these next couple weeks. This week joined specifically by Alexz Johnson, who plays Annie in the Disney Channel original series. So weird. If you're anything like Sean, you're freaking out.
Dude, it was so cool. I know usually you're like, Sean, do you have anything to say? We do whatever. I'm going to do this now, though. It was so cool to talk to Alexz Johnson. If I could go back in time and tell like little Sean that Annie would one day be on a podcast that he hosts, he'd be like, shut your face, you're a liar. It was so cool. I have talked about So Weird a number of times on this show. It is truly, like, it sounds cheesy, it is cheesy, but it's truly foundational to like me as a person. It was right up there with things like Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark. I used to have my mom tape it when I couldn't see episodes as they were coming. I swear to God, dude. I fucking love So Weird. I also some of my earliest crushes, I didn't tell Alex this, but some of my earliest crushes were Cara Delicia from the first 2 seasons and Alexz Johnson as Annie from this season. I even have a whole I'm not going to tell her, but I'll tell you guys now that I got to talk to a childhood crush on this show.
She's going to listen to this, and you'll be embarrassed.
I was lying, Alex. No, I wasn't. Let's be real. But yeah, it was so cool. If you guys are nostalgic for this at all, you're gonna have a great time. We have a great conversation. But yeah,
it's so good. Alexz gave us so many good nuggets from the various things that she was in, specifically So Weird. We talk about Final Destination 3, and she blows our mind with a fun fact about her death, spoiler, in that film. And we talk about her career as a musician, being a mother. There's a lot of great stuff in that conversation. Before that, though, we always berate our audiences at the end of our episodes, asking for people to simply communicate with us in any way. And we received at the beginning of this month a very lengthy email from our good listener Rob. And
what's up, Rob?
What up, Rob? And Rob, apologies in advance. You sent this to us a couple weeks ago, and we hadn't had time to dive into it, but that's only because Rob took a lot of time to write out a lot, and we really appreciate it, because I love a quick message every now and then, but this email dives into a number of things, and so we're going to touch on some of it. So some of the things that Rob talked about, he was kind of responding to recs that we had given in the past, which I loved. He has a specific personal connection to a book that I recommended called Under the Whispering Door, which actually, Rob, I had to take a break in and haven't finished yet, which I suck. So I'm really glad that you read it in between the time that I was able to start it and now finish it, and enjoyed it. Rob also talks about seeing Perfect Blue. Very glad that he enjoyed that, as everyone should. It is a wonderful staple in psychological horror, even though it's an anime. He also mentions Grady Hendrix' work that we've recommended and obviously spoken with Grady before, Final Girl Support Group, and he says that he's working on How to Sell a Haunted House next. But we wanted to dive in. Yeah, I know you loved that.
Love it. It's a really good book.
We wanted to dive into some of Rob's recs. So we're going to do a quick moment. We're not going to do things you probably already know today. So we're probably going to miss some stuff this week, but we want to dive into Rob's recs. You can hear our Mostly Horror recommendations at the end. You can hear Alex's recommendations in the conversation that we have with her. But Rob's recs, Rob, you get your own segment today, Rob.
I was going to say it's its own segment, just Rob's Rex.
Rob's Rex. Listen, guys, if you send us emails, you may have your own segment at the start of our show.
Yeah.
So, we, Rob talks about our Rex that have impressed on him, and he's going to repay us the favor by recommending some. He
It should be called
says,
Wreck-It Rob.
Wreck-It Rob. This is a good one-time segment. Rob, thank you, Rob. Wreck-It Rob. Jesus Christ. That's a good one.
Firing on all cylinders today. All right, let's go.
Our new friend Rob says that he doesn't watch horror films too often. Obviously, I'm sure that that's changing now that he listens to our show. But he does mention some that he enjoys, Annihilation being the first one that he lists, which I know that we've talked about Annihilation a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, God, I would love to talk about that in just one episode. Silence of the Lambs, Exorcist, Alien, Aliens are all favorites in his collection. He also mentions Christine and Maximum Overdrive, which I like are some on the edges recommendations as well. But he says that with the first title in mind, with Annihilation in mind, he's going to recommend the Area X book series that Annihilation is based on. Which are three novels: Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance, written by the author Jeff Vandermeer. He says the movie draws mostly on the events of the first book, but contains elements from the other two sprinkled in. I like to look at it this way: the movie is pretty physical horror and horror oriented, with elements of psychological stuff baked in. The books, being much more drawn out, are the opposite, rife with slow burns, plenty of fear, pain, unease, grief, and sorrow. The fun emotions. Ooh. Deeply unsettling. Closure comes flavor. Eventually, I promise. I blew through the 3 books in about 10 days back in May. Absolutely gripping, I tell you. Yeah, I mean, I love Alex Garland, who did Annihilation. I know that his most recent film was polarizing, but I just based off that film, I would be excited to read a little bit more.
Yeah,
of
I wrote
series.
It down, and I'm actively trying to read more. I read a lot more this past year than I have in years previous, and I plan to keep stacking them up. So Area X book series has officially been added to the to be read pile. Rob, thank you for that.
We're about to go on a 4-hour drive today. We should just play the audiobook. Start the audiobook of Annihilation on the drive. I
wouldn't yell about it. If you can get it, if everyone's down, I'm down.
Yeah.
My vote's yes.
Yeah, Chelsea's going to be editing this after we've taken our drive. Either happy that we didn't do it or upset that we did. The next thing that Rob recommends, Wreck-It Rob recommends, is that he happened recently upon Gillian Flynn's Dark Places. Gillian Flynn, the author, which she wrote before Gone Girl, which has obviously been adapted by David Fincher into a film and really well known. I think we also recommended, back when we had Ash and Elena on, Ash recommended Sharp Things, which is another Gillian Flynn novel. That
Sydney made into a show.
Loved. Yeah, we loved the show. It was really good. And so Wreck-It Rob says, being unfamiliar, holy shit, fucked my whole world up. One could make an argument that it's more of a thriller, but I think the element of human tragedy and fucked upness should qualify it as horror. Grisly, relentless, deeply sad, goes crazy. I like
Love
that.
It. Yeah. Also, thriller is, we've talked about this on the show. Thriller can be its own thing. It can also be a subgenre of horror. It can be. It's a blurred line.
Michael Jackson's Thriller, definitely a horror music video.
Damn right.
He says, I'll also point towards B.H. Fingerman's Bottom Feeder. We can file this under horror comedy. Vampires in New York, featuring descriptive, grisly scenes of unregulated gore, rampant sexuality, and jokes out the ass. I'll say it's a little too early 2000s outdated, i.e. race, gender, sexuality stereotypes. You know what I'm talking about. But if you're willing to get past that, it's worth a look. I found it at a bookstore somewhere in ruralish Chester County, PA for $5, and that's hard to beat. I've never heard of Bottom Feeder before, but
neither have I. It almost sounds it. Maybe I'm just, I've obviously heard the term bottom feeder before, so maybe that's why it feels like maybe someone's told me about it. But but clearly don't know any, it might as well be new to me if anyone's brought it up at any point. So it's also added to the list. I also love that these are all books. I'm excited.
Yeah, you got more added. Yeah. I also say Wreck-It Rob is a good he's good with his words. I like how he's written all of this. So The next thing he recommends is actually a movie. He says, I'm going to shout out John Frankenheimer's Ronin from 1998, an excellent action thriller, and his final film, quoted as a, quote, end of career masterpiece, unquote. First of all, this fucking cast: Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, Natasha McAlone, Stellan Skarsgård, Sean Penn, Jonathan Pryce. And yet, when the average person mentions any of these names, they're probably not thinking of this movie. Shifting alliances among operatives, nonstop action, badass car chases, violently French. What more could you ask for? Wreck-It Rob, do you write IMDb descriptions? This is dope. I love this.
Violently French.
French.
That's so good.
I
love that. You know what? I think I'm gonna go through and just read all of these this next year, and we'll bring Wreck-It Rob on for an episode.
Wreck-It Rob will have his own episode. Yeah. And then he wraps up the Rex by saying, gonna touch on music really quick too, because you guys seem down for some heavier stuff. Yeah. One of you mentioned Chelsea Wolfe's music long ago, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember if we talked about Chelsea Wolfe, but looking up Chelsea now seems like a big horror fan. So maybe that's why we brought.
Maybe that's how we got there.
Maybe. I also will say that there's a collaboration when you look at Chelsea Wolfe's Wikipedia that I just pulled up. She did a collaboration with her friend and drummer Jess Gowrie, and their project was called Miss Piss.
Miss Piss. Oh, dude.
MRS.
Listen,
Piss.
I would down some $9 tall boys at a shitty venue to see Miss Piss. 100%. I'm going nuts at that show.
Jesus Christ. Wreck-It Rob continues to say, the intersection of heavy and ethereal is a pretty cool place to live in, and if you guys like her / that stuff, you should also check out Emma Ruth Rundle, Holy Fawn, Midwife, and Alcest. If you dare go heavier, maybe Death Haven, which I've listened to. He says in parentheses Angry Mode, older Opeth in parentheses Spooky Mode, or maybe even Mastodon in parentheses Just a Good Time. I saw them a couple months ago. I know Mastodon. Wreck-It Rob then goes on to say, I'm down for any mostly horror music recommendations. I just have to start writing them down. I try to give mostly horror music recommendations sometimes. So
that's throw some stuff in.
That's good. And then Wreck-It Rob is very nice and says some nice things about our show, which we don't need to say because people will just think that we're annoying. So Wreck-It Rob, thank you again for this long list of recommendations. We will take them to heart and watch them and read them. As well as the kind words. As always, if you're listening to this, be like Wreck-It Rob. You'll get your own segment. Send us your mostly horror recommendations of the week, and we will go over them. I promise. Outside of that, Sean already did his whole spiel about how excited we were for Alexz Johnson's conversation. Any final notes before we get into So Weird, Sean?
Guys, again, I was gushing. I was nervous. Talking to Alex was just awesome. A total nostalgic, full circle thing for me. And if you have any love for this show, and if you're an ancient like us, an elder,
if you're an ancient
like us, then I really think that you're gonna love the show. And in the darkness is the light, dude. In the darkness is the light. So you either get that or you get the song. You got to pick. Chelsea, you got to put one of them in.
We're just going to use that. Yeah, that was perfect. That was absolutely perfect. On that note, we will get you guys over to our conversation with Alexz Johnson, and we will catch you on the other side for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. All right, we are joined today by Alexz Johnson. Alexz is an actress and musician who listeners may know as Erin from Final Destination 3, Annie from the Disney Channel original show So Weird, and Jude from the CTV show Instant Star. Alexz, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So
we
stoked
are.
to have you.
We're so excited. I will say, I normally don't say this in conversations or anything like that, because we're equally excited for all of our guests. But Sean has a very specific tie to So Weird, or just like love for the show that I didn't watch So Weird growing up, so I didn't have this nostalgia factor. And the way in which Sean has been absolutely buzzing since we were able to schedule this interview has been wonderful. So I just wanted to, tee that up, because this is great.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
gonna put me on the spot immediately. Yeah, I'm gonna geek for a second. So Weird was just very foundational for me. I was born in '93. I feel like I was at the perfect age for So Weird all the way through. It was the intro to a lot of tropes and things that I've seen in the horror genre since, really exploring it. It was the intro to a lot of concepts that whenever I hear about them now or seen them represented in media, I always think back to episodes of So Weird.
Mhm.
Things like banshees and changelings and stuff like that. The first time I ever heard of these things was on So Weird. So
Mhm.
needless to say, it is a really big pleasure to be talking with you today, and stoked to do this interview.
That's awesome. I love that show. It's really, it's interesting how much it's like kind of been with me throughout my entire career. Like just the paranormal stuff and like the horror film stuff, and like how I was so drawn. I've always been drawn to like kind of, I don't know, just counter culture things. So I think it's super cool how that's kind of, been my story starting from that show. So I'm so grateful for my experience on that. Maybe it just tweaked my brain a bit playing Annie Thalen, maybe just from that experience on, it just
just took a little of it with you and set a good foundation for everything to come. So
exactly.
With that though, I want to jump into one of our favorite questions to ask every guest that we bring on the show. Not sure if you consider yourself much of a horror fan, but whether you are or not, very, very curious about your introductions to the genre. We're looking for any moment where maybe you snuck out of bed at night and watched something from behind the couch that you weren't supposed to see, or maybe you had an older sibling show you something that maybe you weren't ready for. Do you have any memories like that to share with
Oh
us?
my gosh, yeah. So exactly that. I'm number 6. I'm number 6 in a family of 10 kids. I have 4 older brothers.
Wow.
Okay.
And when my parents were building homes when I was young, they designed like, they were just having lots of kids, my mom and dad, and the boys would get kind of like the basement suite, with also the boys that was like their place. But I always had a really close relationship with my older brothers because I was always their goalie outside.
Okay.
They could always use me as like some kind of prop in their, whatever they were doing. I was such a tomboy growing up. And I wanted to be just like them. That's why, my name, Alex, I added the Z because I got to a point where people literally thought I was one of my brothers. Like, oh, and I went, no, I'm a girl. I'm Alex. And they're like, and Alex was a boy name. So I added the Z, which I have in my name. So it just goes to show, I just looked up to them so much and I wanted to do everything they were doing. So I remember distinctly sneaking into the basement when they were watching Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like 8 years old.
Perfect.
And I was in between, like, one of those old, like, 80s sleeping bags kind of tucked underneath. And they let me watch this movie because, they're having popcorn. And I was like, don't tell mom and dad. And so that was my first introduction to horror films was, pretty much one of the probably most frightening for a child. Anyway,
yeah,
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you kind of thing. So yeah, that was the movie.
So good.
Did it like scar? Like were you excited about it, or did you have trouble sleeping? Did you regret taking it in, or what was your response to it?
It didn't scar me nearly as much as other horror films.
Okay.
When I was younger that I was exposed to after that.
Sure.
I found that the more realism stuff scared me as a kid, like the alien stuff. I'm not like the movie Aliens, but like Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
That destroyed my childhood.
Yeah, it's I'll probably come back to it. I've been asking. I'll just do it now. I don't care. We're gonna go a little out of order. I've been asking every guest that we've had on. I'm full tinfoil hat right now with all of the info coming out. What are your thoughts on just kind of like the alien news that's happening right now, if you have any? Or you're just avoiding it because you don't want to deal with fire in the sky situations?
No, I mean, I've had in my mind, I've played out the scenarios so many times, like driving on like a dark country road, like going to get milk at the grocery store, like, mom heading out in like, northern Ontario thinking, what would I do if my headlights, like, just, there was like an alien walking on the side of the street.
Yeah.
And I was always like, you know what? I'd probably, honestly, as insane as it sounds, I'd probably like pull over and like see if it needs any help.
No, because that's how you
See
end
if it
up.
needs milk. Yeah.
Like if it needs anything, because it's weird. Like I'm actually like, it doesn't surprise me. All this information doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I think it's just like scraping the surface on like, we're spinning in space. There's so much we don't know, and I find it kind of like, crazy if it's going to be in our lifetime that we hear it, like crazy.
I think it's going to be real soon, but that's a whole other conversation.
I do like, I almost expected that answer because it's like, we're in the US and it's a lot of the places where you have UFO sightings, at least like historically, it's like rural areas. So I think of all the just kind of openness that's in like the northern, the area of Canada. And I'm like, there's just gotta be aliens there already. And like that sort of stuff probably happens all the time. And just like the 4 people that live in a city will know.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I won't go into it, but I do think that a lot of the missing cases that occur are probably responsible for like paranormal activity, like whether we don't know what it is, but it's just like there's so many accounts and cases of the most bizarre situations of people going missing with their shoes left, their backpacks left. Like it's like, why? It doesn't make sense. There's no body. Well, yeah, it does make sense. Like
aliens.
So
Alex gets it.
Yeah,
Alex gets
it,
guys.
Not even 10 minutes into the conversation.
Yeah, confirmed. Validated. Yes.
So, now that we're all on the same page about aliens, I do want to I want to jump back a bit to we teed up your history with horror and So Weird and what So Weird has done for your life and career in general. I read a good story about how you kind of went into or made a pitch to manager, agent, or something about trying to get your musician career at a young age off the ground, and it landed you with So Weird. Can you kind of talk about that? Like, was it just like a great happenstance where you kind of were able to fit into this role, or how did you land that originally with the series that had been running for 2 years prior with a different lead actress?
I think there's a couple things. Like, I think I definitely had a very unique look as a child. Like, I was very, very, quote unquote, I still am. But like, I'm very fair. And then my eyebrows were really fair. You could hardly see my eyebrows, my eyelashes. It was almost borderline albino. And my hair was like much blonder than it is now. Like, this is natural. But when I was little, it was white, like almost white blonde. Okay. So I think for the paranormal, kind of like, there was something kind of freaky looking about me as well as a kid. So I think that kind of, and I was completely just, I had no, like, I was, I was very, just as a kid, I find I was very willing, being number 6 in my family. I was just an open kid. I had no insecurities. I was like, oh, my family loves me. I'm the middle child. Like, everybody thinks I'm great. My older brothers think I'm so cool. So I was really confident as a kid. And I think that those things is what Henry Winkler, who was the executive producer, the Fonz.
Yeah.
I went in. Cool. It's so cool. I'm like from a small town, Maple Ridge, BC. Like, where's that? And I was flown down to LA. I did an audition and I got the part. It was really quick. And it was really surreal, and I didn't even know the weight, because I hadn't really even seen an episode of the show as a Canadian. Like, we didn't have the Disney Channel, right. So I didn't understand what was going on. But then, Mackenzie Phillips and everything that came with it. and having to do that first episode with Cara Delizia was, I mean, she was a sweetheart, but it was interesting coming in as such a young girl. I'm so glad I was so naive to what was happening, which was that I'm coming in to basically play the lead, or continue on as a lead character as Kara's leaving. So my naivete just came on. Hello, everybody! Like, wee, this is so great. So I'm glad for those things. But yeah, I think I literally just won the part. It's as simple as that. Like,
That's so
that
good.
happens with acting. I don't know why. I've been so close to so many other parts. Like Mean Girls and so many things in my life. Freaky Friday, I screen tested for with Jamie Lee Curtis. With Annette Bening.
Wow.
I spent the day with Annette Bening acting with her. It was going to be Annette and me. And then Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis got the part. So these are things as an actress that it's like, who knows how things would have unfolded for me,
Sure. There's a parallel universe where these things happen. It's 'cause the idea of someone else playing Annie is just so like foreign to me. I couldn't even imagine someone else in that role.
Right.
So
exactly.
The casting choice was correct. I'm curious, coming into an established show, what was it like coming in to not only an established show with an established cast, established fan base, but taking over that lead role? I mean, there had to have been a lot of pressure there. Was it, they all have their ways of working with each other and their sort of dynamic. How easy was that transition and fitting right in?
Well, again, like I was so naive. Had I been like the age that I was when I landed Jude Harrison on Instant Star, it would have been a bit different. I was more of like at an age of knowledge. I felt like was so weird. I mean, I was just so taken care of. And when I say that,
Good.
I was really protected by Mackenzie. I mean, Eric Lively, like, had his eyes on me like 24/7, making sure I was safe. And like, it's such a crazy industry to be thrown into at that age as well.
Yeah.
Right. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of like, there's a lot of wanting to separate the child from the parents. The industry feels like they know what's best, all those kind of things. And I was really lucky that I had such an amazing cast that was like aware of how naive I was. They were aware I was just this Canadian girl who has just landed the show. So I was really taken care of in that way, especially Mackenzie Phillips. I found that from her experience being a child actor,
Sure.
She's been through a lot. So she was very protective of like, and watched out for me. So I learned
Good.
a lot from her as well. Yeah.
Was it a long
that's
period
awesome.
of time that you were there shooting this, or was it? Because
It was over the course. Yeah, it was filmed in. So I'm from Vancouver, BC, and it was filmed in Vancouver. At the P&E. So we have this big exhibition place called the P&E. I don't know what that stands for. I should know. Pacific something. Pacific National Exhibition.
Okay. There you go.
And they had a big stage there. It's the same place that they filmed Josie and the Pussycats. I think
Nice.
a couple other places you could look up what else was filmed there. But so we filmed there, and it was about, I think, over the course of like a year and a half of my life.
Okay.
It was maybe about a year and a half of my life of shooting and going to set. And that's a big chunk of your
Sure.
like young teenagehood,
Of course.
Did it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there a moment of like, I don't want to call it culture shock, but did you have like a realization that like, oh, this is kind of like the way that the industry is at a young age? Because you obviously went on to do these other things. Like, it's not like you realized that the acting was a specific type of way and then went on to do something else. Like you continued, and you were talking about, how you were with Instant Star. Like, you obviously grew into knowing what the industry is like. So was that just kind of a gradual thing, like as you were on the show, or was there kind of like a learning period where you maybe had trials and tribulations of being a first time, like child actor kind of?
Yeah, I feel it was kind of both. Like, I feel like, I think I've been really lucky, but I also think like, I don't know. It's weird. I feel like, I don't know, when I was really young, I felt like I'd always kind of been around the block before. Like, I'd always felt like
An old soul.
Yeah, but still super naive. Like everybody's
Right.
good, everyone's going to treat me nicely, everybody's going to be great. I'm from a safe family. I never had anything happen to me as a child. Um, you know, which I'm so blessed for. Like as a Disney kid, you look at some of the stories of there's just a lot that can happen under the umbrella of that type of success at a young age.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think, yeah, there was something about me, call it being the number six and watching my older siblings navigate the world. There was something about me that was just kind of like, no, like I never got into drugs. Like um, I always sang, so I didn't want to smoke because I was like, well, if I'm going to wreck my voice, like there was something, and that wasn't because trust me, in a lot of other ways I rebelled against my parents, but there was something about my personality that wanted to do good, and I wanted to be professional, and I was very honest with my parents all the time if somebody made me uncomfortable and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's something you can teach your kid, or if that's just something that your kid comes with.
Sure.
I feel really lucky for that because there's a lot of red flags that I was able to catch as a child actor, that could have been a different situation.
Yeah.
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 That's
It's, you hear so many horror stories, especially from the now grown up Nick kids and Disney kids. And so hearing that So Weird was like a positive thing for you, and that they welcomed you, and that you had the knowledge and, just
Yeah.
intuition in yourself to avoid the bad situations when they
Well,
did come up.
yeah,
It's
like the
a
first thing
positive
they
story.
wanted, yeah, the first thing they want to do when you're a kid and you land a series is like, oh, let's get her down in LA. Like she'll just be with her tutor. And my mom was like, what?
right.
Well, she's going to do some Disney commercials. Like she'll be with her tutor, like her school teacher. And my mom's like, I don't know who this person is.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if she's been hired by the Pope. Like, I don't know who my
Yeah.
daughter's with. So it's those situations where it's like, okay, let's be smart about this. It's all very
Right.
exciting. It's very life-changing, but it's also like your daughter is still your daughter. She doesn't belong to the system all
Yes.
of a sudden. You
Go
know what I
mom.
mean?
Go
Yeah.
mom.
So it's
Yeah.
like those details, I think. And being a mother myself now, like that's a whole other conversation. How it,
Absolutely.
yeah. It's
And
like,
also, a tutor
Yeah.
will know science and math. They may not be able to raise a child, be a,
Right.
Yeah.
maternal
Yeah.
figure to a child.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You got to
Right?
be a
Yeah.
parent.
a wild concept.
Yeah, or
but-
spot an alien, when there's one
Right.
around. Like,
See, yeah, no, we know that they can't even do that. So
Exactly.
obviously there's a lot of good memories from the show. And Sean kind of talked about he has a couple that really stand out to him in his memory. I'm curious if there's any memories that stick out to you from the show, whether it was in filming something or if you have a specific episode that was more fun than others to shoot, or maybe just the overall theme or subject matter was more interesting to you than something else.
I remember just the Changeling. The episode was so ridiculous. It was like, first of all, I'm like, nobody's going to think this baby looks real. Like, I remember thinking, like, this is like, it was so horrific. And like the line, I remember the dialogue being like, it's a monster. Like, it's an outer worldly monster. And it was like having to say that line, an outer worldly monster. It was like, this isn't like, I said to the director, I'm like, can I just be like natural? Because I don't think a girl my age would be like, it's a monster. It's an outer worldly monster. I remember being on set, like trying to win this case. At the director is like, this is the writers. Like it's a Disney show. We can't change it.
Right.
But that was a long, very strenuous episode to film with that baby. Like that mechanical baby. That was exhausting because it would like break down and stuff like that would happen. And so that was really frustrating at the time. But I remember that episode a lot. And obviously just being on stage singing and stuff like that. Like the carnival episode was amazing.
Yeah. I have some behind the scenes questions. Okay. For those two episodes specifically. The Changeling episode is one of my favorites.
Really?
I
Yeah.
love it. I specifically remember, for a couple of reasons. I specifically remember I was actually really, really sick. I had like a really high fever to where my mom was considering taking me to the hospital, but they were like, it's so high that we don't want to move him. Like I was really, really sick the day that I saw that episode. I had been like knocked out for hours, and I woke up and my mom was sleeping on like the other side of the couch. and Disney Channel's on, and I just happened to wake up like, I don't know, like 15 minutes before this episode started. And yeah, it was such a scary idea to me and such a cool one. I was like, oh, there's like these fae beings, that come and switch kids out. And I had like a deep fear of being kidnapped as a kid. So I don't know, and I recently made Steve watch the episode, and he was like, yo, that would actually be terrifying to see as a kid. Like the way that the changelings looked were just a lot.
Yeah, just the beginning of that, the beginning of that, watching those two, the four eyes from outside of the window, just looking in, like while normal stuff is happening. I was like, that would be scary. And, like,
it's scary.
Disney didn't used to care about scaring kids, like, during the middle of the day. So yeah,
that's they were just willing to be a little bit darker then, I think, than they are now. But
big time. Oh yeah, of course, across the board in film too. It's like,
exactly. Yeah, especially when it comes to kids stuff, it's just so much, which I want to talk a little bit about later. But really quick, the baby. How was the baby done? I'm assuming it was a mix of like an actual baby that you had crawling around, but then also or like a toddler, and then also like a puppet. There was almost like Reagan-esque from The Exorcist with the face. Do you remember any of how that baby worked?
Yeah, so the baby itself was like a mechanical baby inside this little like creation of whatever textiles they used to make this creepy thing that I had to act with, like what like haunts your nightmares. And then for the baby who was crawling and moving around, we had twins. So they had twins on set that they were, and it's really hard working with babies and like toddlers and stuff on set. It makes it for such long shoot days. Like just remember that with any like Children of the Corn, like anytime they're working with children and like under the age of like 5 or like 6, it's like it's a long ass production. Because you can't make kids do things, and also like it's just like they get tired so easily, and so I was kind of still a kid myself. I was like, I want to go home, I want to go to bed, and it was like, here we are, like filming the scene again, between the robotic baby and then like it was like a very strenuous episode to film.
Got you. It's you also brought up the carnival episode, and I just want to. There's obviously so many performances and stuff in the show, especially in your season, because it's not just Mackenzie's character Molly singing, but also you. When you guys are doing that, like I'm assuming, you have to have everyone has to like be jamming, but are they even allowed to play the music, or is everyone just kind of pretending to? I'm assuming there's some lip singing. What was that like? How many times did you have to do it?
Oh my god, it's horrible. It's why I moved to New York to play real shows. Like, it's like why I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. No, because it was just like, nobody wants to be there. Like when you have background performers, like they're like, they're just like, they're working long hours, and you're like, here I am on stage again, and it's all lip synced to a song. I did write some of the music for So Weird, which was cool. Like that song at the carnival, To Dream About You. I was a writer on that song.
Nice. That's awesome.
Which was cool. But yeah, it was, it's always hard because they're always doing the fake. And if you watch, like, it's always really off time. And like, it's the whole thing is horrible. It's a horrible thing when people are feigning affection for you. Number one. Number two, to protect yourself, you moralistically as a person, so you don't kind of cave in on yourself. You have to put on some type of ego to be that person on stage in the moment. So you develop kind of this weird, like, a superiority complex that's not real, but you have to have it in order to get through the scene.
Sure. Yeah, I would imagine. It seems so scary to like, you have to go up there and pretend to sing and like kind of like dance around and knowing that it's a set. And I'm like, I wonder how many times they did this, what take it is. Everyone's like, in the audience, and then as soon as they say cut, they're all probably like and grabbing their water, and
like you're not in yourself in the moment. You're disconnecting. You're watching from afar, and you become like a bit of a shadow of yourself. It's a weird experience, honestly, and I hate it. I've had to do it so many times in my career.
Got you.
It's horrible.
Makes sense.
Sorry to dredge that back up.
Yeah, sorry to bring up these repressed memories. You get to do the real thing now playing your actual music for people that are actually there for it. So that's
it's a
solid.
very different experience. Exactly.
Yeah. I have to bring up, your character Annie has this spirit guide protector in a panther. I know you actually got to work with a real panther on set a couple times. And I think I heard that they gave you this you had this big stuffed animal that you worked with that you even got to take home. So I don't know if you want to talk about either of those things, but my question, the main thing, sorry, I do a lot of 3-parters or 2-parters, is if you were going to have like a real life spirit animal, what do you think it would be and why?
Oh, crazy. I've actually never like
You've never been asked that?
No, it's like I feel like it would have to be like that's a hard question. I think it would be an eagle.
An eagle.
It's a good one.
Okay. Any particular reason?
Just because I don't know. I feel like I know that like that is what my spirit animal is supposed to be. Like when I was born, and like all the characteristics of like, like there's just there's like the eye of the eagle. I'm always like observing from up above, like in my family. I feel like in the structure of who I am as a person, it's just always been like representative. I don't know why.
Sure.
I mean, I don't actually have any idea why, but I mean, why was Annie's? Right. It just feels right, you know?
Resonates. Okay.
But Fair enough. Knows? I mean, it's like people who give themselves their own nicknames.
Sure.
Mine's an eagle,
I love that as a comparison.
Yeah.
Listen, birds are very free. Eagles are very strong creatures. I respect it, and I can 100%. I can 100% see it.
And as a mom, you got to have that eagle eye. I get it.
Yeah, you have to have the eagle eye. They're always above. They're always like kind of like one step ahead. I feel like they're planning. They're away. They like to be away and like build their little worlds. Like they're like very not in the crowd. They're up above it somewhere. Like just not. I feel like the eagle's just always kind of like one step ahead.
Fair.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
I have to ask, do you still have the panther, or do you know where the panther is?
No, I don't. It made me sad though, because I thought to myself when you said that, I remember having it and I don't know where it went. But I also I can't give myself too much, because like I've spent so much time moving. Like I lived in New York for like almost a decade, and I had stuff in storage in Canada, and I think someone must have taken it. It's gone.
Oh,
fair. Bummer.
That's sad. Did you? I'm gonna assume that the answer is no, but did you have any other souvenirs from the set or anything along those lines? I'm sure a big stuffed panther is different, but
I keep like bins of like a lot of my stuff from the past, like the original scripts and stuff, and read through scripts, and like I have some jewelry that Annie wore, like just things I couldn't really even pinpoint. I think the prosthetic I wore as the old lady. I think that's in a plastic bag somewhere downstairs. In like my acting bin of like so many things. I have like a so weird bin and like, but yeah, like stuff like that. That was also, man, it's bringing back so many memories. Like you don't stop in your life when you're like busy doing things in your life. You don't stop and like reminisce about these things that you've done.
Sure.
It takes talking about it.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
That's what we're here for. We're here to bring up those old memories.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to know where the baby from the Changeling episode is. That's the main question that I would love to get to the
some
bottom
warehouse.
Of. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how
probably
frightening.
In the trash. It's probably in a landfill by now. Yeah.
Seriously.
The cat with the red jewel from the Mummy episode. I was thinking how badly I want that just like set up on my bookshelf or something. If I could take a prop from the show, it would be that.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, that's right. I was dealing with insomnia when we shot that episode. I had like 2 weeks where I didn't sleep.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I remember I was really scared. Like the knowledge hit me at that age where I was like, wait a second, like I have to be on set every day. I have to work. This is like, there's so many people who are relying on me. And I don't know, that it hit me all of a sudden, the responsibility I had at the age that I was, and I just didn't sleep.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
As someone who struggles with sleep issues, I get how that goes, but I didn't have the added pressure that you did. You had a lot more responsibility.
I remember that's the memory I got from that episode.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about, we brought up that you're a mom. I'm curious your thoughts. It's so weird. On this show, we talk a lot about something we call like gateway horror, and that's just the creepy stuff, the creepy shows and books and movies and things for kids. I'm curious about your thoughts on gateway horror, or would So Weird ever be something that you might show your kids? Or
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, do you know who my dad is? Like, my dad is like the dad who had whatever playing at any time.
Okay.
Like, he
Same.
likes, I think his favorite movies like Frankenfish 5. I swear to God, my dad, he likes like Sharknado. Like, my dad is
Okay.
like the most like geeked out like horror movie whatever. Like, the worse it is, the more my dad's like, you gotta give it a chance. Like, it's the weirdest thing. So I grew up with like my dad just talking and watching like these things, which is like, that's just been a part of my life. But for my kids specifically, we're just not a very big TV family.
Okay.
And movies are really special. So when we put a movie on, for example, this sounds horrible. I did show my daughter Nightmare Before Christmas this Halloween.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's turning 4 in February,
Okay.
and she also watched Coraline.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So she was totally cool. But the thing is like, I gauged it with my daughter. Like, to me, I'm watching it like, these things aren't that, like, they're not, it's kind of fun to be a little bit scared. Like, it's kind of exciting to be a little bit scared. But that kind of stuff that animated kind of stuff is so much more, it's so much different than shooting, violence, and gore, stuff like that. I just think that is like stuff that is just, and that's a whole other conversation with where I think horror is going. I mean, House of Bodies compared to, the scariness of, some of the older classics. Like, I feel like it's gone so much more towards like hyper sexualized gore. It's like a cheaper way, I find, of like entertaining people than like the clever, the clever spooky thrillers. So for me, when I thought about showing my daughter Nightmare Before Christmas, I was like, I think she's ready. And she was. Like, she absolutely loved the songs. She loved it. And it was not like a bad experience. It was a really exciting experience for her. So
Good.
But it's hard as a parent,
Yeah, to know when to. Yeah, it seems terrifying to know when to introduce things into a child's brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I know I have my girlfriend's has a nephew who is obsessed with Nightmare Before Christmas. It's like also watched it, I think, at a young age. I think he's like 5, so probably watched it at like 3 or 4, and literally only wears Nightmare Before Christmas clothes, like can't stop singing the songs, like still years down the line. And that film is what, 20 years old now or something? Like, it's like that just proves the power of that film. And then on the other side, like Coraline it has its really spooky elements. Like, I think it's one of the best animated movies ever, and I love Coraline. But it's also like, at the end of the day, it's a story about like a fearless young woman, like, overcoming like these things with her parents. Like, it has this like really strong theme that like, even if, maybe a 3 or 4-year-old won't latch on to, like, it's a good way to like have, like spoon horror into things, but also these are films that still have these wonderful messages.
And I wouldn't necessarily know if it would be like a gateway as much as it would be like, there's very, very different types of spooky films. Like, there should be categories within categories within categories.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, what kind of gateway are we talking about? Are we talking about like, there's just so much out there that I would not like. My daughter's never seen anything with guns. Like, she's never seen somebody shoot somebody and die. She's never seen somebody die. She's never seen a human being, except for her mom, who cut her finger open yesterday morning. That was pretty real for her. But so those things are like, the violence is something that I won't bring into their lives. Because that's enough in the world anyway. And when she's old enough to see the protests and things that go on in the world, she'll be able to digest that when she's ready. But I don't want to bring that stuff. But I always struggle with, because I am a very spiritual person and I'm a very moralistic person, and
Mhm.
I do struggle with like, I'm not one of those everything's good. I am very like, we should stick to some rules in life and we should try
Mhm.
to be like, decent people. So I do struggle with like, the boundaries of that, because personally, I like being spooked. I think it's a really exciting experience, being on your toes and holding your breath. And, there's so many clever ways to scare people. It's one of the funnest things. I love Halloween. I've always loved Halloween, and I don't think it means that I'm evil. I don't think it means
No.
people are evil because they like Halloween. So I do
Mhm.
struggle with that with some of my spiritual friends, like, oh, we don't celebrate Halloween with our kids. And I go, but there's so many ways to celebrate Halloween. You can either,
Yeah.
what kind of Halloween are we talking about? Are we talking about pumpkins and spooky music and, and gooey fingers that, you can eat? Or are we talking about like, you know,
Pagan
I don't
rituals.
know, pagan rituals, and like the movie The Witch, which I think is like, I would never watch The Witch with my daughter ever, like unless she was like over the age of 18, you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
stuff like that.
That's one of the main things that we're
Yeah.
that we're exploring on this show with every guest that we bring on, and movies that we're talking about, because we talk about everything from the absolute gore fest, like nobody should watch this film, to kid stuff
Saw
like So Weird. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we go from Saw to Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Coraline and So Weird and
and
Nightmare Before Christmas
Goosebumps
and
and stuff
Yes,
Goosebumps.
like
I'm
that.
exactly. That's
One
why
of
our
our
show is called Mostly Horror. It's a big
mostly horror.
spectrum.
Yeah.
It's a huge
Yes.
spectrum of
And
things.
Awesome.
Subgenres
and
within subgenres, like you said.
yeah, and we think
Exactly.
that everything is like valid and everything has its audience and means different things to different people. And so it's just about finding where, like, what parts of this huge genre you fall into, and what works for you.
Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah. So the really quick, you brought up your finger. Could you let us know what's
Yeah.
going on with that?
No, I was just trying to cut. So I did like, I had some frozen bagels and I put a whole bagel into the toaster. So it just defrosted the outside lightly.
Hmm.
Then I took the bagel out to cut it in half to then retoast it. But I have like a brand new serrated knife,
Yeah.
and I was holding it, and like my daughter was on my side and my 1-year-old son was over here, and it was just kind of hectic, and it was morning and I hadn't had any coffee yet, and I was just like, and I cut it, and it literally like went, imagine, like I was like, oh man, right, it's frozen. Well, it's almost like I was basically cutting into like a pumpkin. It was such a
Ugh.
hard bagel, and
Okay.
that went straight into my finger to the
Ugh.
bone. And I was like, oh no. And there was just like, it didn't hit a tendon, I don't think, but there was a lot of blood. And I just called my husband, who was already had left for work. And he said, I don't think anyone has ever seen somebody leave a home hardware as fast as he left. Because I called and I was just like, oh no, oh no. And I just heard like scream. Like, it's just like, I turned to go back and go, what happened? Did one of the kids fall off? Like, what happened? Right?
Right.
Like, anything could have happened when
Yeah.
someone's on the other line of the phone going, oh no, oh no. Like, I wasn't even coherent. Anyway, we decided I decided, everyone told me I should get stitches. I just didn't want to have to wait at the hospital for like 3 hours. And I just thought, it's such a clean cut because the knife is so new.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm sure it's going to heal. So I'm hoping it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez.
You at least know that the knife works really well.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah. Great test.
that's that's the one positive that you can bring from this. So it was funny, you were starting to tell us the story before we started recording, but you made an allusion to Final Destination, which I think this is a great segue into that.
Yes.
You are in Final Destination 3. A film series that is known for death premonitions and then some eventful on-screen deaths. And your character specifically has a really Sean and I were
favorite.
talking about it before. He called it realistic, which is, I think it is. I think there's a lot of them that are like, there's the things falling off of a semi truck that like everyone is afraid to drive behind semis with like logs in the back now because of those movies.
Even
but,
me.
like,
To this day.
it's
To this
devastating.
day.
But your character gets, I got shivers from watching it again, but you get nail gunned through the back of your head. do you remember what it was like to kind of like set, because you're there, like you're it's not like a, you know, a mannequin of you, like you're there with your hand like this and you have nails through your hand, through your face. Like, do you remember what it was like to set up that, you know, practical effect and have
Okay,
all
so
that stuff on you?
it actually was a mannequin.
What?
Really? It looked good.
It looks so
It
good.
looked-
So everything leading up to the nails coming through my face. So that was a complete. They made 3 replicas of me. I think each one was like $30,000
Whoa. Okay.
or something. Yeah, it was really expensive, but they made 3 complete exact replicas of me down to the eyelashes, the hair. Like, it was so realistic looking that I watched the scene on set. I think it's in a behind the scenes somewhere where I'm like looking at the nails go through my face in real time. The weirdest thing about it is that you never see yourself in 3D. You only see yourself in a mirror
Yeah.
and in photographs. You will never know what the side of your face looks like to other people.
Yeah.
You will never know what you look like around your whole peripheral to other people ever. So watching unless you get your entire body molded. So I'm looking at myself and I was actually like super disappointed. I remember thinking, like, cause this is before the nails went through me.
Right.
I remember being like, that's what I look like. And everyone's like, that's you. I was like, oh. I was
You're
like,
like,
oh man.
It's not perfect, right? And they're like, no, that's you.
I'm so like, it's so underwhelming. Like, I feel like in photos I look so much better. Like, this is just like, at the time, at that age that I was just like, oh, well, okay. Like, so I'm like there. And then I watched myself with blood. Like, I fell back. Everything's like, there was so much little moments of like filming prep, like coming back onto the nail gun and like all those moments, the bird, the thing, like, but the actual nails going through me was completely fake.
Okay. All
Dang.
right. I thought it was because there's, throughout that whole franchise, there's so many interesting deaths, and then there's ones that look like they really focus on practical effects, like your death, and then there's ones where it looks like, CGI really took the it was the only way to do it, and it's reflective of CGI at that time. So I think it's one of the best looking deaths in the whole franchise. So I guess it makes sense, but it was hearing that was not a real you is just insane.
Yeah.
And if I could take a prop from a movie, I would want the one where I got nails through my face. You know what I mean? Like, if I could.
People love it. Yeah, people love it so much. Like, they just love that death so much. I mean,
I need to get the BTS. I don't think I have Final Destination 3. No, I need to get it and look at the BTS and see if I can if we can see anything with the 3D replications.
See what's going on. Was it just a trip? You said, it was weird to see those those sides of you, but in terms of like the actual violence being done to you, did that impact you at all? It was weird enough for me to watch that scene because I was like, what are they doing to Annie? Don't put nails through Annie's face.
It was totally weird. It was like, it was such an experience. I mean, filming with the originals, right? Like, I know that it's become such a franchise and stuff, but like, I'll always have so much love for the first 3 films because of
course.
James Wong, who was such a good director. And it was just such a fun experience, like being on that film. I got a little bit sick and tired of roller coasters.
Yeah.
Like, there was just so much roller coastering that I was like, I'm never going to roller coaster again.
I was going to ask, and when I was watching the movie, I thought to write it down, and it's one of the ones that didn't make it. Me and Steve do not do roller coasters. We are not. I am afraid of them, not because of Final Destination 3, but that sure as hell doesn't help. You guys had to ride them like really over and over?
I think it was like 70 times.
Oh my God.
It was called the Corkscrew. So the roller coaster is called the Corkscrew. It's at the P&E, and they built that whole devil that comes out of it was all built by Set Deck. Everything was
built,
which
was so sick. I could tell that was real. Yeah,
it was so amazing how they built all of that, and it was a lot of night shoots. So it was a lot of shooting at night. So you kind of have to prep your clock for that. Like, and just over and over and over and over. It was really, yeah, you just get so used to it. You're just like, oh, here we go on this roller coaster again. I used to like the corkscrew when I was a kid. It was a fun roller coaster. And by the time I was like, just finished that, I just changed I didn't have the same kind of fear on roller coasters I used to have.
That's what it is.
It's like the scariest coaster next to the coaster, which actually I think like it's made out of wood, which is number one red flag. But the corkscrew was like the scariest roller coaster at the Peony. So once I'd been on it 70 times in a row, it's like, let's go. Like I went skydiving.
We are different people. My brain would have been like, wait, I'm riding this thing 70 times statistically out of how many, like blank out of how many or 70 times is something going to go wrong?
No, I knew I was safe because I knew that the insurance and like that I knew that the money that was put into this from the studio was so expensive that they had the best of the best safety teams and the best. So I knew I was fine. It's when you're scared is when like, the 15-year-olds like buckling you in to that shaky pirate ship number that you're going to fly out of,
Yes. That is the exact thought that I have anytime I'm at a carnival or anything.
My family could like, they would be paid out. Like it have been almost worth it,
Right.
I guess.
We lost Alex, but
I would never be thinking about the insurance money when I'm about to strap into a roller coaster.
The eagle. One step ahead of you guys.
That's the part of you that would stop and help the aliens even after seeing fire in the sky.
Exactly. I also have another little quick story from that. My line at the beginning, before I get on the roller coaster, where I'm talking about the odds of dying with Chris Lemke.
Yes.
That line, I had gotten into like a bit of a brain stutter. So like I was so tired and exhausted, and we'd been shooting night shoots, and that I kept forgetting my line. And as an actress, who was in the midst of shooting Instant Star, and it was the hiatus of Instant Star, and I knew as the lead of multiple TV shows how much money is being spent every minute on set.
Sure.
Yeah. So I kept on messing up the line. Like I literally kept going action, and everything was set up, and all the background performers and everything was like, and I would just and there's on the blooper, it's like I keep doing it, but it got to the point where it was like that thing that I did with the sleep, like I couldn't sleep. My brain's like starts going into overdrive. Like you're thinking about it too much. Now you're not thinking about acting. You're thinking about messing up this movie for the whole crew.
Yeah.
So I started getting into like this. I was like, take a deep breath. And luckily I got through it. But that was really scary because when you're, again, it's like, let's go. That's show business. Like it's your time. Here you go. Camera's on you. But you're also just a person.
Yeah. So much pressure.
And so much pressure all the time. Yeah.
Once you mess up one thing like that too, it's like it's a vicious circle because now you're hyper thinking about it. I'm that exact same. I've done that on these interviews before, and I'll message like we don't say it to the guest, but I'm typing to Steve. I'm like, please help me because I'm falling apart.
So those things where it's like there's like that's one of the hardest things about those types of positions with acting and stuff is like, oh god,
you at least had that perspective at a young age, which is great. And I feel like probably something that, I'm sure it's like a blessing and a curse because there's other actors who may not care about the time and money or may not be aware of the time and money that they're wasting, or at least may not have it at the forefront of their brain. Whereas you're making these decisions from such like a hyper professional level at, still pretty young age in your acting career. So.
Yeah, I think it's the only way I've been able to support my entire career independently as a musician is like I treat it like a professional job, every day. Absolutely. I'm like, that's how you have to do these things as so I it's definitely like has been a benefit for me in my career having that outlook on things.
So of course that's a great you're feeding great segues this whole conversation, which I appreciate. But before we let you go, we want to talk about your music career and it's obviously always been a big staple of your acting career as well. Like, it was a part of So Weird, obviously a part of Instant Star. I mean, people may not know this, but like I've literally watched a video and read things where Demi Lovato credits you as like inspiring her career, like her wanting to be a musician, which is huge. I'm curious, your thoughts on, being in these shows and being a musician and inspiring other people to want to pick up a guitar or learn how to sing or be a musician, and then also talking, kind of about what it takes to be a professional musician, because that is something you spoke about, moving to New York to follow that career path. And I mean, you were just touring overseas for a bit recently. Like, I'd be curious to know kind of what all goes into doing that independently.
I've made a lot of choices in my career that the most important thing for me is integrity. And because of that, it would seem to people that I made a lot of silly choices. Like, for me, it was never about playing the Super Bowl, because for me, it was like, I have to get to where I want to get to with my integrity intact. Which is why I want to say, since you guys are mostly horror, when House of Bodies came out, the edit of that movie, I wrote a letter to the producers and I ended up making it public. I wrote basically how I felt about the complete lack of inclusion of the actors in the edit of that film. Like, the script compared to the final edit was like a completely different movie. So when these things happen in your career, I was signed to Sony, I was working on music, and, they wanted me to change my music to sound a different way. They wanted me to be a different thing. And at the time I was like, I'm not that thing. Like, this is my music. This isn't my acting career. Like, I'll play different characters and I'll do that, whatever. That's a job. But this is my music, and you're not going to make my music fit into what you want it to sound like. So for my music career, I made a lot of different moves so I could keep the integrity of my songwriting, keep the integrity of who I wanted to be as a musician. And that's the fans that I've kept to this day. Yeah. The fans that follow me and support me in my career is because the brand that I am is like fighting for your own vision as an artist. And, the whole spiel of like, there's nobody that does what you do specifically. And to be the best you can be. I feel like a lot of my fans really, that's the narrative that they're drawn to. So I know that basically every single day I get a message that says Alexz Johnson should be more famous. And I always find that really interesting, because it's like, I don't know, because like, I don't know if that's like really necessarily the type of people who get to those levels. Like, I think there has to be some kind of collaboration. And for me, there's never been a collaboration. It's like, I'm going to do what I do the way that I want to do it when it comes to my music.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't want your music and your art to be like their product. You're working when you're acting and playing these other roles, you're contributing to this collective. But I totally understand that. It makes me think a lot, just to kind of tie it into horror, but you're reminding me a lot of like George Romero, the director of Night of the Living Dead. Yeah. He
do your own thing.
Just like, yeah, he refused. Like, he could have been a millionaire, like this huge whatever, and he just actively again and again throughout his entire life just said, nope, I'm going to make exactly what movie I want to make, and everyone else can eat it. And I love that. So much respect to that. Yeah,
because like, to me, it's about respect. To me, that's the greatest currency. Next, it's not about being a millionaire. Like, I don't care if I'm on a yacht somewhere singing shitty music, like in in like a thong. Like, to me, that's not the hard part.
Yeah,
sure.
To me, it's just, that's like fodder. To me, to be an artist and to have my kids and like be like my mom, stay true to herself her entire career, I have so much respect for her.
Yeah.
To me, that has so much more currency than like any quick buck ever. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's also just seems like the easiest way to burn out. Sorry, Steve, I interrupted you.
No, totally. I agree. I just echoing what Sean said. It's 100% the respect. It's so respectable to have that point of view and to do things the way that you want to do them. Like there's a lot of
But it's
people
also so hard.
Yeah.
it must be. It must be. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh man. It's like you
'Cause-
feel like you're living under a rock, somewhere.
Yeah. Well, then, the catch, the double-edged sword of that is that you then don't get to just be the singer-songwriter artist, but then you have to be your own producer and manager a lot of the times, and marketer, and like, granted, we live in a world today where social media allows that, it makes that a lot easier. You can cut out those middlemen, but still,
Yes.
it's a lot of work,
Yeah, it's a lot of
yeah.
work. Exactly. And exactly. All those things. I am very grateful though that like we do live in a time where I have that ability to do that. And I'm also learning so much. Like when I decide to like open up my indie label and sign other indie acts, and like, I know how to book entire tours, and how to make money doing it. Like I know how to do Squarespace, and I know how to like record, on Apollo, and I know like I'm learning so much in my 30s that it's like, wow, like it's really cool taking these things on, because it's like I'm constantly humbled. I'm constantly like, what am I doing? I constantly feel like a total loser starting from scratch. But in hindsight, when you take on new things and you do it by yourself, you earn it by yourself.
Yes.
You're like, I
absolutely.
did do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the reward must feel so much more, like it feels so much more rewarding.
It's so much more rewarding than like, when I was signed to Sony and I got given $150,000 advance that I split with my brother. I remember thinking to myself, I went beat red all the time when people would ask me, you're signed? And I was so anxious about the fact that I was a signed artist, because I felt like I don't know what I'd earned.
Right.
I was like, this is weird. Like, I'm just going to be famous.
Sure.
I'm just going to be a famous singer-songwriter.
The switch was flipped, and that's it. Yeah.
I was like, that's it. And like, for me, I'd look at like Peter Gabriel and Annie Lennox, and like, I'd look at artists that I was like, it's going to take me years to get there. And that's why it just didn't fit me. It was just like, I need to earn my stripes forever. So
Absolutely. And it seems like you're killing it. I mean, I recently listened to Seasons, and I loved it. And I went back and was listening, the comparison from Seasons to songs that you were recording with, like Instant Star and just some of the older songs. There's such this growth period, and I don't know, it's just awesome. It's a cool journey to see. So,
thank you so much. That's really sweet to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Gotta know when the next New York show is so we can come by and check it out.
So, you guys are in New York, right? Yeah. Well, it's May. I'll keep you posted on that. I'll write myself a little note.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Please do. We will be in attendance. Well,
nice.
Alexz, we really have loved chatting with you. Before we let you go, we end all of our conversations with what we call mostly horror recommendations. So if you would oblige us, we would love to know a horror film and then a non-horror film, really any other movie that you would recommend to our listeners. Could be anything under the sun.
Movie or album or book, but
anything you want, really. Yeah. Any horror or non-horror thing that you would want to recommend to our listeners.
Okay, well, I think horror would be Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
Great one, yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Because, like, oh my God.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
And even now, and I would say as like a movie, especially now, jeez Louise, I would say as a movie, let's just say with Fire in the Sky, I could never sleep again with my legs out. I always had to have them tucked up against my body when I slept.
Fair.
And I still do that.
It's the stuff getting close to the eye is what really gets me. That whole like,
it's getting pulled by your feet. Being pulled by your feet, like they could just pull you out of your bed.
Yeah.
So that, and then I'd say as a movie, like a movie that changed my life, that I think is one of the most beautiful movies ever, is Cinema Paradiso. Cinema Paradiso. It's a beautiful classic. Foreign film that everybody should see, and it's just stunning and gorgeous.
I haven't heard it, but I need to. Oh, from '88.
Yes, and
okay.
Yes, an Italian film.
Okay.
Yes, Giuseppe Tornatore. It's the most beautiful movie ever.
Wow.
I absolutely love it. So I'd say that one. And yes. I
Love
like
it.
that you guys have no idea what it is either.
Yeah, no, well,
that's a win.
No, we
yeah, no. That's our
sometimes there's
favorite.
people that are like, my recommendations are Alien and
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
The
The Exorcist.
Godfather, and we're like,
Yeah,
great.
but-
Thanks so much for the recommendation.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, love those movies, obviously.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
really fun when we get a rec, and I'm like, I've never heard of it. I don't know anything about it. I'm excited.
Of course,
to check
it would be. Yeah. I love it when people give me new insight on films that I should
Yeah.
watch. So, anyway,
Great.
this has been
Well-
so much fun, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
we've had
Alex,
a blast.
we really appreciate the time and look forward to May when you're in our neck of the woods. All right. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation with Alexz Johnson. Thank you again to Alex for being on the show with us. It is now time for our mostly horror recommendations of the week. You guys got 4 recs today. 4 recs
Yeah, you
this
did.
week. We got Wreck-It Rob's recommendations up at the top. You got Alex's recs just a couple minutes ago, and now it's time for ours. I've been making you go first, so I can probably go first with this week's recs. To start off, because Wreck-It Rob was asking for more music recommendations, mostly horror music recommendations, I'm gonna recommend the new Spirit Box EP. It's not a full album, and I think I might have mentioned. I actually don't know if I mentioned any of the new Spirit Box songs in our recs recently, but Spirit Box put out a new EP a couple of weeks ago now. It's called The Fear of Fear. They've been trickling in singles throughout the course of the year. If you know Sean and I, you know that we're big fans of Spirit Box. Saw them open for Under Oath,
Yep,
probably
dude,
over a year now.
it was them, Bad Omens, and Under Oath. It was a hell of a fucking show.
And Straight from the Path.
And Straight from the Path. Yeah, you're right. It was a
nuts.
hell
so
of a
good.
fucking show.
It was so good.
Yeah.
But we, so Spirit Box put that out. They have, they had a couple of singles they released called The Void and then Cellar Door. But they're just back at it. Spirit Box is just 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite full releases of the year. Obviously it's not a full album, but it's one of my favorite collections of music right now. So wanted to recommend that to our listeners that may be interested in some heavy music. They also did a collab with Megan Thee Stallion. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. I
Yeah.
listened to it. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's fine.
So yeah,
The best thing about that collab is that it reminded me of when Jay-Z and Linkin Park did Collision
Sure.
Course, which is just, God damn it, one of the coolest things to ever happen in music. And it made me listen to Collision Course right after listening to that. So that's one rec. The other thing, if you listen to our episode last week, I mentioned at the end of our episode with McDavis that I was going to go see Priscilla and the Killer in theaters. And while I can't recommend Priscilla, I was not a fan, unfortunately. I have to recommend The Killer. It's now on Netflix because it's one of the films that David Fincher's doing, like a number of films with Netflix. But I was really lucky, got it to see it in the theater while it was still in theaters. And it's different than Fincher, a lot of Fincher films, but it's the same in a lot of ways. It's him going back to his style of Fincher films. It's also kind of like a commentary on him filmmaking. It's basically about a hitman that's like bored of being a hitman and fucks up and has to like pay for the consequences. But like about someone being at the very top of their game, but being like really bored and like taking a leap and doing something and then it fucking up, which like to me feels like David Fincher's most recent film before this, which was Mank, which was like a leap that he did and that wasn't received amazingly. But everything in this film, it's so precise. It is a film where a lot of stuff happens at night and you can still fucking see it on the screen, which I complain about all the time because everything's too goddamn dark. Most of it's as with a lot of Fincher films, Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor do the score, which is wonderful, but it also has a lot of the Smiths in it. like all that Michael
Oh.
Fassbender's character listens to is the Smiths. So there's a great scene that you would have loved because it's this charming man, just like as he is like dumping evidence somewhere.
Love it.
Which is great. So yeah, it's really like, it's really slick. It's really, you know, it's not a complicated plot line at all. But it's just really detailed, kind of philosophical, really fun. And it's on Netflix now if anyone's interested in watching it. I couldn't stop thinking about it for a while. And frankly, because I didn't like Mank, the last David Fincher film that I had seen and enjoyed was 9 years ago when Gone Girl came out. So it has been a long time since I've had a new David Fincher. Again, one of my favorite directors of all time. It's been a long time since I've had a new David Fincher film and been able to scratch that itch. So was very happy, excited to watch it again soon on streaming now that I've seen it on in the theater. So that's my rec this week. I had to gush about The Killer really quick.
Love it. Yeah, I still got to see it. I just have a couple things to say. One, there's just so many things that are like tying together for me, and it's really, really interesting. First, I was just watching like a video about it was like some behind the scenes footage of Linkin Park and Jay-Z recording together. It was super, super interesting. Like that was like a couple days ago. So it's funny that you bring that
you
up.
See Jay-Z and they're like, no, like add, like you got to project more. And he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my personality. And he goes, chia. And then it's fine. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly. We saw the same thing.
I've seen the same video. Yeah.
That's so funny. Also, just have to say, Courtney from Spirit Box is just a fucking badass. Truly, we've talked about them a little bit, but if you guys have not checked them out, do that. And also check out some of her videos of her recording because she's just so powerful. And like holy shit, if you get a chance to go see Spirit Box, do that.
The other thing I'll say about The Killer, one other thing, if it interests any, if what I said before didn't interest anyone into watching it, I guess I don't know if this comment will either. One of the coolest fight scenes I've seen in so long, like one of the
John
best.
Wick 3.
Even it's probably better than most John Wick fight scenes. Whoa. And I don't mean like the choreography. Everything in this fight scene feels like it hurts. Like every punch, it's the sound design, it's the choreography, it's the way that the camera moves. Like John Wick has obviously curated this very specific look and it's really clean. But like, dude, this one fight scene, and like if you've watched it or if you do watch it, you'll be like, oh yeah, this one. It just looks like it hurt. Like you feel everything in the scene, and it was so good. And a lot of people I'm not the first one to say that, but it's just like, holy shit, it was so cool. So that's my last killer comment.
All right, man. We will take it. So my recs this week, I actually have two. I have two based on a couple different prompts. First, we've talked a little bit about music in Recs, and I don't usually come with music Recs super often, but I'm bringing one to the table. I had another reason to do it earlier, and I don't remember why, but I want to recommend specifically the album Milk-Eyed Mender by Joanna Newsom. You guys might be familiar with it a little bit. I probably talked about her a bit before when we had Brian on, the director of The Strangers, Brian Bertino. But she sings The Sprout and the Bean, which is a very famous song from that movie. I love this whole album. It's super weird. If you're into weird sounding music, you will dig it. Also, random fact, she is Andy Samberg's wife. They are married, which is super, super interesting. She has a crazy unique sound and definitely does not give a shit about like what songs or like what popular songs are supposed to do. She does her own thing, and I love that. My other recommendation, I don't think that you will love the full album, you specifically, but I definitely think that some people here might, if you like The Sprout and the Bean a lot, and you like songs that really kind of set an atmosphere and a mood, you will dig Milk.
I remember hearing or knowing or finding out somehow that Andy Samberg's wife was a harpist. Which is now clicking.
She is Joanna Newsom.
That's cool.
So my other recommendation is, because we've talked a lot about books, and I've been wanting to reread these recently. If you are into high fantasy, like super, super fantasy, like old school fantasy, that's kind of, I will tell you right now off the bat, it is a slower burn read, but it's not like a crazy long book. It's just the pacing is a slower thing, but I love that. And you guys should check out the Blue Sword series by Robin McKinley, specifically The Hero and the Crown. When I was in 3rd grade, I went into the library and I happened to stumble across this book, and I saw the cover art and I loved it so much. It's just pure like fantasy. It has this
Very
awesome
fantasy.
dragon. The reason that I'm also bringing it up is we talk a little bit about dragons on next week's episode. That's all I'm going to say. So I got dragons on the mind.
Do
but
we talk about dragons?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about dragons.
I guess kind of.
Vaguely. We a little bit talk about
the
dragons.
word dragon in last week's episode.
No, in next week's episode, we talk about dragons a little bit. I guess we don't have a full conversation, but we're talking about a dragon movie. That's all. We're gonna leave it there.
Okay, sure.
So for me, it's more because I watched that movie today. So I got dragons on the mind, but yeah, it's just a really great book, and you can read them. This is a weird situation where you can read either one first if you want. I found out that The Hero and the Crown is a prequel to The Blue Sword, like years after having read The Hero and the Crown. But you technically, The Blue Sword was written first, and then you go backwards. But everything online is just like, you can truly read it in any order, and it's some people really like the prequel first, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, so those are my recs: Joanna Newsom and Robin McKinley's The Hero and the Crown, and/or The Blue Sword.
Wow, I like that. I've never heard of any of those. Those are all new words to me before. Tell me words I don't know. I already know those words. I've never heard those before, so that's great. Well, as always, I hope our listeners enjoyed this week's episode and our 4 mostly horror recommendations of the week. If you are interested in harp music, if you're interested in high fantasy, if you're interested in low fantasy, if you are interested in David Fincher, if you're interested in Finch's The Bird, send us an email, mostlyhorrormovienight@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at mostlyhorrorpod. We're on TikTok and Twitter at mostlyhorror. I am on all the socials at Steven is Average, and Sean is everywhere at Hypocrite Inc. or hypocrite.inc. And that is all we got for you this week. We will catch you next time.
Goodbye.